Okay, so we're going to talk about using ink to ink up our plates, okay? So we'll be using these little pieces of plexiglass. They might be small, they might be a little bit bigger. You'll be able to see them here more when I put ink on top of them. So we'll be using these as our plates, and when you do this, you are going to simply take just a little bit of your color and squirt some onto here. Okay, so just a little bit, and then these are called our brayers, and we'll be using this to roll out this ink evenly, okay? So I'm going to show you how the correct way to do this is first. So we want to spread this out, and a little ink goes a long way. So you can see it's not evenly covering my brayer right now, which is why I have to keep going side to side and up and down. And you can hear that sound. That sound is a good sound. That means that the ink is going on consistently in those areas. Okay, so I look at my brayer. It's pretty even. It looks even on my plate. That means that I'm ready to ink this up, okay? So what I will do is I will take this and I'm going to do my first pull my first proof print. Now, this is not the final way that I want this print to look. I'm gonna do some more carving, which we'll talk about, but I just want to show you the printing process. Okay, so then what you'll do is you are going to take a piece of paper, and we are going to have that piece of paper down here. Hold it in down with one hand, and we are going to rub like crazy with the palm of our hand. Now, it's important to keep one hand down and kind of look to make sure, okay, did I get all the areas? Because once you pull it up, you can't put it back down, okay? So I pull this and I can see my print. Maybe I didn't have enough ink in some areas. You can see that this paper was a little bit textured, so you can see that there, okay? So you do not just have to use one color though. You can also use any color of paper instead of just white as well. So what I would do if I'm ready to pull another print, I'm actually going to go rinse this off. So I'm gonna go take a second to do that. Okay, so I just rinsed it off. You can see that it's still wet. It will not take very long to rinse it out in the sink, but then just take a paper towel and do your best to dry all of that off, because the ink is not going to go on the plate very well if it's too wet, okay? So now this time I'm going to apply two different colors to this, okay? So I'm going to start a blue printing plate over here. And I'm gonna add a little bit more pink to this one here. So when we have multiple colors, we want to have a brayer for each color, okay? So since I don't have any ink on this right now, it's gonna take a second for me to roll out. Okay, we're starting to hear that sound, so that means we're almost ready. Looks pretty even on there. I'm gonna do the same thing with my pink. Now, you don't, once you put ink on top of the other, like on the printing plate, you can actually get a few batches off of it. You don't have to replace the ink every single time. And I'll show you here what happens when we get too much ink on our plates. All right, so now this time I'm gonna do like half and half color. So I'm gonna start by taking my pink brayer and going about halfway. Then I'm gonna switch to my blue brayer, and notice I'm doing this half first, and then we will have to overlap to mix the colors a little bit. You can see you get a little bit of purple there. It gets a little bit on here, so just be careful with that. Okay. All right, so now I have a nice even color there, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do this on a white piece of paper again, just so you can see the difference. So once again, hold it down and rub. Okay, so now you can see how different those two prints look just by using different colors, okay? So in some of these areas I had too much ink, and so you can't make out the text all the way. So I'm gonna show you some better ways to do that here in a second if we have those problems. But first I wanted to show you how our prints can look so different depending on what color of paper we use, okay? So I'm just putting a little bit more back on here. Since I was using the same colors, I didn't need to rinse it off. So I'm gonna use this orange paper now. Okay. So now I've pulled a pretty good print here, but look how different that looks. Same design, same colors, just on a different piece of paper. So we're gonna experiment with lots of different backgrounds and colors for this. But as we do this, it's important not to get too much ink on our plates here, okay? I'm not gonna rinse this off because I'm just gonna rinse this off afterwards. So this is what happens when we get too much ink on our plate, okay? So I'm gonna use a lot of blue this time, so it's gonna mix and make purple. So I'm not gonna do a very good job of spreading this out. And I'm just going to overload it in here. So there's so much ink. Gonna even add more just to really show you this. All right, so I'll hold this up. So you can see there's kind of a texture on there. There's a lot of ink on there, okay? So let's watch what happens when I take a piece of paper. All right, so I put this down. Okay, so there's so much ink on it that you can see that some of those lines, you can't even, it covered them up, okay? So like this was that line there. There's so much ink in there that it filled it in and we can't see those details, okay? So that means we have way too much ink on there, okay? Now you can also have not enough ink. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so I'm actually not gonna put any ink on it this time. I'm just gonna take this and rub. Okay, so there was so much ink on that last one that I did that it pulled a pretty good print, okay? So now let's see what happens when I try that again. Because let's say I didn't roll enough ink on here. There's not enough ink. You see that it's kind of, some of those details are a little bit fuzzy. We can't see them everywhere. So comparing them to this one that we just did, some of the areas are kind of worn off looking a little bit, okay? I'll do one more. Okay, and then you can, this one will seem really, really faded. So this one we can hardly see, okay? So I just pulled a bunch of prints here. Here's this one. There's this. Notice them here. So these were all kind of using the same color paper. We have just the pink and white ones, the pink and blue ones, and then we used that orange paper. So even though I was using the same color of ink, they all look a little bit different depending on what paper we use, okay? So that is how you properly ink up your plates, and you'll have to do this a couple of times to get it just right.